Hello EPQ students. Finding the right structure for your EPQ report is absolutely imperative. And this is one particular structure, I've called it version 2 here, that I'm going to talk through today. Now, beginning with your introduction, remember the introduction, the main purpose of any introduction is to tell your readers exactly what this report is setting out to do. And in doing that, you need to look at your research question, you need to define some of the key terms, provide important background that they need to know, some contextual evidence, but above all, explain why there is a debate, what the debate is, and how are you going to go about seeing which point of view is the stronger one. Now, I've got a much longer video on introduction on my YouTube channel, so that suffices for now. Now, the report, as you know, gets broken into arguments, chapters, or sections, whichever you want to call them. Now, I think what's a very good idea in your EPQ report is to use the terms proponents and opponents, or supporters and critics, or something along those lines. I've said in many of my EPQ classes, the problem in EPQ reports often is that students give us sections of information. And even if they're very well referenced and they are very technical, you're not going to get good marks. You're not going to get more than a B or a C at best if you just give large chunks of information. What you need to do is to argue, to analyze, and above all, to evaluate, to show which is the stronger opinion. So, proponents, I begin with, and I say, what is the first key argument of the proponents? And then I will provide some of the evidence for this argument, facts, data, laws, etc. There'll be many, many references in this section here. Consider it like a kind of literature review where you show that you've researched into the point of view of the proponents. You might give some examples, or you might show how this would be applied, and go into a little bit more detail there. By doing this, you will make sure that rather than describing and explaining, that you are analyzing and evaluating. And here's the key idea. Once you've dealt with the first topic for the proponents, you can then move on to the opponents. So it's a bit like tennis. The proponents serve, and here the opponents are going to return the serve. So what is their view on the same point? How do they contest the arguments of the proponents? What's the evidence, the facts, the studies that they employ? And you need to, of course, explain and compare with the above argument, showing which one is more convincing. What's the evidence from the studies? Is it really good scientific evidence? Is it based on meta-analysis? Is it based on several scientific studies? Have the studies been peer-reviewed? If it's history, have the facts been checked? Where is the ideological bias, etc.? Now, this is the key section. When you finish this section, each of these arguments or chapter sections, you include a mini conclusion. And by a mini conclusion, I really mean 5 to 8 lines. So it is a paragraph in which you say, you recast what happened. The proponents say this. You then say the opponents say this. And the key idea is that you, in this mini conclusion, will say which one is the more significant. So it would be something like, we've seen the genetic explanation. We have now seen the societal or sociological explanation. Based on this first argument, the sociological argument seems to be more convincing because, and you make it very clear who the winner is. So this interim conclusion or mini conclusion is absolutely key. Now, a key thing as well in the reports is to link between the sections. So to have a smooth transition to argument 2, we will say, in the next section, this paper will go on to, and you signpost exactly what is going to happen in the next section. Then we move on to argument 2, and we rinse and repeat. We say, the next argument we're going to look at is and you explain what the proponents argue. You give some facts, analysis, and evaluation. And then, once again, you deal with the opponent's point of view. You do the same. And again, there will be a mini conclusion. And that is the absolute key thing, where you go back to your research question, you explain how that research, how that section was strictly relevant, and you explain which again was the stronger argument. And in this particular video, I'm going to suggest you do that 3 times, just to explain. Roughly, that's because an introduction would be 300 to 500 words, and each of these chapters or sections will be about 1,200 words, is what I think, which is why I'm saying I think 3 arguments or 3 sections is the golden number for me. And once again, in argument 3, you do the same thing. You show the proponent's view. You show the opponent's view. By doing this, you get around this description explaining thing, and it becomes much more argumentative. And you end the section with this mini conclusion. And then, of course, the final conclusion would be to look right across the report, to say, in section 1, we saw this. In section 2, we saw this. In section 3, we saw this. Therefore, the conclusion of this report is that the proponent's argument is far stronger. And you can briefly say why. And it's always a good idea to end a report by indicating some of the weaknesses of your own research and where further research is needed. Now, you don't have to do your report in this way, but the great advantage of it is to reiterate, and I don't apologize for repeating myself, this will ensure that your report is an argument, that it is something that looks at one point of view versus another and avoids just giving lots of explanation. I hope that that was very clear, and that that might be one of the templates that you use for your EPQ report. Good luck.